Hello and welcome to another review from Cinema Savvy. It's myself, George, and today I'm joined by Chris Vagana. I am on intro duties and outro duties because Chris is currently ill, but he
Again.
has joined us. Yes, he's ill again. And we have a very special review today. In continuation of Oscar season, we have another Oscar favorite, in the biographical drama based around, I say drama, really, it's not really that, we'll get into that later on, but I, Tonya, we're reviewing I, Tonya, if you couldn't guess already, starring and being produced by Margot Robbie as disgraced US ice skater Tonya Harding. For those that don't know the story, we're going to probably tell it you. There's no spoilers because it's biography, it's based on real life. You probably know this story, and it's a pretty insane story that you wouldn't think would happen, but did happen. But before we get into that, how are you doing today, Chris?
Well, apart from the illness, I'm not doing too bad. This is one where we agree on it. We've talked a little bit about the film before we get into it, and I was actually really interested in this one, actually, from the trailers and stuff, and really the main... Well, it's nominated for 3 Academy Awards. It's Best Actress Margot Robbie. The one that it's probably going to get is Best Supporting Actress with Allison, Janney, and Best Editing, which there's many other films that have come out which have much better editing than this one, but... No, it's a weird one, and it's one that I'm very torn on, and I think you're very torn on it too.
Yeah, so Allison Janney, she won the BAFTA on Sunday.
Yeah.
Almost every clip that's been advertised is, I mean, if anyone's watched the Golden Globes, the BAFTAs, when they announce a film on the night and the nominations are, every clip from I, Tonya has been Allison Janney.
Yeah.
Because she is by far the best thing, straight away. My initial thoughts are that Margot Robbie is great. But Allison Janney is absolutely phenomenal in this film, and she rightly. I mean, I think this year the actor and actress nominations are locked down. Everyone knows who's winning those, and I can completely see why she doesn't have a lot of screen time. And I think this is what both one of our like joint issues I guess we have. But what I guess we could say is heading into the film that I knew the real life story. For those that don't, basically Margot Robbie is Tonya Harding. She's a figure skater who's come from like a sort of trailer trash background, in a nice way of putting it. And she makes it to the Winter Olympics. And eventually what happens is that her ex-husband and her security guards hatch a plan to break the knees of her rival to take her place and qualify for the Winter Olympics. It's a real life story. It was, I mean, we weren't born. Actually, were you? No, you weren't. No, you weren't. You weren't
No,
born.
no, 93. So it was around, well, a big event that happens was like 2, wasn't it? Or 91, I think.
Yeah, so we weren't around, but I mean, I've heard of the story, and I guess this film kind of just does the usual and makes it out there, makes it famous for everyone else. And this is what I don't like. So I've seen this trailer a lot of times at cinema recently. Now that most Oscar films are out, this is the kind of last one for UK cinemas, I guess we could say, that we're going to get. And the issue I have with this film, and it's in the trailers, is that I don't want to say mockumentary, but I think my message to you was this film is pretending to be the Wolf of Wall Street on ice.
Yeah. No, and I said to you, like, that's probably, if you're going to sum this movie up, that's the best one sentence sum up you can do. I agree. I mean, it's credited as a biographical black comedy film. But I don't think it balances that tone well. There are other films that do balance that tone well, and there are mockumentary aspects to it, actually, quite a lot. They're sort of like segmented all the way through the film and kind of bookend it as the film goes on. They're almost like chapter markers almost. But my problem with this movie is I don't think it succeeds in that. When it starts off, yes, it's funny. You've got some of the quips in there. Even with Allison Janney, who, when you break the character down, is a really, in context of this movie, like it does say at the start, like all the cases and stories are very sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Contradictory, and they don't really know the nitty gritty of it. But she is like a horrible psychological bully to her daughter. She's really kind of a horrible character, yet the writing is so good for her that she does get a lot of great jokes in there. She probably gets the best jokes in the movie. So all that stuff when it begins, and there's like domestic abuse and everything like that, it is still injects comedy into it, and I think that worked, and it does at the end as well. My biggest problem with this movie is the entire middle just lost me. For a movie that's under 2 hours, it felt so much longer than that to me. I think the pacing really dragged in the middle, and it tends more towards the comedy stuff in the middle. I think I said it felt a lot like Logan Lucky. It felt a lot like that, almost like not a heist thing, but the same
a hillbilly sort of doing
It was
something
like an
bad.
episode of My Name Is Earl, almost.
Yes, yes, that's actually perfect because he even has the dodgy mustache.
Yeah.
The Winter Soldier in this film, he is not. Yeah, I think that's a perfect, because with these sort of biopics, when you know what's going to happen, you're always waiting for it, and it's the big plot point. And with this, it does a great job of building it, but then it cuts from her at the age of like 4 to 10, so when she's 20.
Yeah.
And it jumps ahead. You think another 5-6 years, but actually, she's like got a year or two on. She's just grown her hair and she's become Margot Robbie.
Yeah. There's a scene in this movie where Margot Robbie and Sebastian Stan are playing their 15-year-old counterparts, which is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, she's 28, and
yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, like their chemistry kind of works together, but I just feel that with this, once you get that middle act, it just starts repeating itself. That we know there's domestic abuse, we know there's issues, but then they just keep giving us more of the same scenes. They're having an argument, they're friends again, argument, friends again, argument, friends again. Quick cameo from the mum, argument, friends again, and it gets very boring knowing what's going to come. Because although it's about ice figure skating, there's maybe 3 scenes of her on the actual ice, outright doing the figure skating at the events. Similar to Rush, if you look at the Ron Howard Rush film, one of the best biopics I've ever seen, on my top 10 films of all time. When you get the F1 races, they are very smart in what they choose to focus on, and that biopic is based around the events. Whereas with this, it almost feels as if skating, like, it's not that it's not important, but they just gloss over it. And I can understand they want to focus on other things. When it's a biopic, you need to get that both, because for 5 minutes we'll focus on the ice skating, but then they won't really go back to ice skating for a half hour.
Yeah, I think the big going into this one, I knew nothing about the story, actually. I'm not the sports guy. I don't look at all the history of sports and everything like that. My parents very much knew about it, and they were sort of like hinting at what was to come. But the big thing in this movie, the big moment, and they even like stopped the movie dead in its tracks and like big that up for like, lines of dialogue saying the event, the incident, everything like that. The whole Nancy Kerrigan thing, whilst it kind of pushes that entire final act into motion, they never really focus on it. The whole character of the person of Nancy feels just completely glossed over. And I understand that I think there's been some negative criticism saying that this kind of glorifies Tonya a little bit. It doesn't dwell on the act that happened with Nancy. And I think that was kind of a missed opportunity. I think they could have that would have been your moment to add some drama in with those two. There's a scene where Tonya in the film says that, they weren't enemies behind the scenes. They were sort of, when they were on the road together, they hang out, they were good friends. And that's really it. We get no other interplay between them. So when the actual incident happens, it just kind of feels like a wacky moment of hijinks rather than like a big dramatic event, which it actually was.
Yeah, and when the moment comes itself, the build-up's great, and then the rest is like a poor, not poor comedy, but it's like, oh, these guys are idiots that have done this, and they just build up on that. But you're right. With Nancy, she's in one scene, and they forget about her, and then she comes in to get her knee broken, and you don't need to feel anything because they want you to be on sort of Tonya's side, if that makes sense. But because she's not really been in it, you're kind of there like, oh, it's her. Okay, it's fine. But they assume people know because they just go on about the incident rather than go into detail. And they spend and it just kind of, there's an idea, and then suddenly we're not doing death threats, we're just going to break a leg. And then again, the other issue, it doesn't even, yes, you get the FBI stuff, but it just shows her competing in the Winter Olympics like a couple of weeks later. Whereas in real life, I think one of the big things was that she managed to come back inside 6 weeks of that injury to be at the Winter Olympics. Whereas with this, it just glosses over it, and it's just her moaning about, she made it and whatnot. But the problem with this film is that I feel that by all these breaking the fourth wall moments, all these mockumentary with the old cameras and stuff, I feel that we're missing out on a fantastic drama.
Yeah.
And I think this film is like, I can see why. I mean, personally, for me, there's the two great things about the film is Margot Robbie and Allison Janney, but the film just kind of left me not wanting more, but kind of like, I wish someone else would have done this.
Yeah.
I would have kept that same cast, don't get me wrong, but I wish somebody else would have, actually.
Yeah.
Imagine if you had, I don't want to say Daniel Boyle, but just because he's on the news, he did a biopic on jobs and stuff. Ron Howard, someone that's got a good track record of doing sort of dramas or something. I would have been fascinated with how they would have done this. Whereas I feel they tried to make it too comedic, too, wacky. And when you've got two, I mean, they're not just from Guardians of the Galaxy, but when you've got 2 songs you've heard in a year on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, it's kind of like, oh, I'm thinking of Guardians, but I should be watching this, especially when there's like one of the most important scenes of the film, and they've got a song like that on.
Yeah, I will say though, from a soundtrack standpoint, like Guardians of the Galaxy side, I absolutely love the soundtrack to this movie. You got Dire Straits in there. There's like a little bit of Cliff Richard, Bad Company, Foreigner as well. So I really did like the music in it. But you're right. It surprises me that there's only one screenwriter on this film. I mean, the guy who did the screenwriting was Stephen Rogers, which you did a great comparison with, like Winter Soldier back to Captain America on that one. But it feels like a movie that's got loads of different writers on it, and each one wanted the film to be something different. You've got one person in there that wants it to be a serious drama film. You've got one person who wants it to be the wacky hijinks, shenanigans movie, comedy. And it just doesn't mesh. It feels really, as you said, like if they got another director, I think they probably could have like really zoned into it, make it more focused on the actual drama of the situation. Most of the film, as you said, is pretty much just Margot Robbie and Sebastian Stan's relationship, and as you know, kind of repetition of scenes and everything like that. I will say though, based on the relationship in this movie, this is what the Jared Leto and Harley Quinn relationship should have been in Suicide Squad. But yeah, no, that's pretty much
it's. Yeah, what I would say is that the best scenes are all with Allison Janney as the mum, and sometimes less is more. But when it's a biopic, her mum clearly had a humongous impact on her life. To take her out the middle act doesn't work because we literally don't get her for 20 minutes, half an hour. Then she's chucked in, and it's literally just a joke like, "Oh, this is where I'm almost out of the film," and then she disappears again. I wish this film had just been. I wish someone had done a rewrite, and not that I want and all this stuff, but for the story they're telling, there's so much more. And I feel that the story of Tonya Harding, yes, a lot of it is to do with her first husband, but so much more is with the mum, and we get that in the opening scenes. And there's no coincidence that they are the better moments of the film. I'd have much rather seen a drama about her and her mum, bringing in the later aspect and closing off, because there's a wonderful scene in with her mum when she's on the tape of the FBI and stuff, but it doesn't feel earned because you haven't really seen it. You can only go back to them opening scenes, and you kind of forget that she's been in it. Whereas so much of it's based with her husband, and you're right, it feels like there's more than one screenwriter. I think it's so all over the place. They're trying to cram too much of a timeline into this one biopic.
Yeah, they should have focused on like a specific section of it. And if they had focused on the relationship between her and the mum, you kind of get a little bit there in the subtext, but I don't think it really comes to fruition at the end. You could have seen the character of Tonya, like essentially like history repeating itself, and she's almost becoming exactly like her mum towards the end, which you get a little bit of, but it never feels completely earned or gets to that point. There's moments which are great, but as you said, I don't think we get enough of that. That being said, like performances in the film, I think are fine, especially from Allison Janney. I think she'll still has a good chance of winning Best Supporting Actress. But when like you get that moniker like Best Supporting Actress, I just naturally go into it and expect them to have like a really big role in the movie. But then I think of Mahershala Ali from Moonlight last year. He's barely in like 15-20 minutes of that movie. Or what's her name? Michelle Williams was nominated, wasn't she, for Best Supporting Actress for Manchester by the Sea? And she's in like 2 scenes in that movie. So I guess it doesn't really matter in the terms of the screen time.
Yeah, I think the scene she's in, she steals every single one. And I can see why she's up for everything and why she's winning. And I think she said in her BAFTA speech that they wrote the role for her. And I think sometimes I'd always give her right credit for that, because if you look at 3 Billboards, Martin McDonough, he wrote roles specifically for 2 actors. So 1 actor, 1 actress. One was Frances McDormand, the other was Sam Rockwell. They're both bringing home the Oscars next week. Yeah. Allison Janney, no coincidence. Sometimes the best writers are ones that write their roles for certain actors because they know they're going to get this performance out of them, and they shape it around them. Whereas like Margot,
go on, sorry. Go on.
I say with Margot Robbie, because she produced it, that helped her, because I thought she was great, and okay, she's not going to win, but she rightfully is being nominated for stuff. Because she is great in it, and she does look a lot like her. But the one thing, the minor criticism is that when you've got a 28-year-old playing a 15-year-old, you can see it. I mean, the hairstyle does make her look a bit younger and stuff, but there's a couple of scenes where it just looked a bit too old because that's my final kind of thoughts.
I guess why they didn't do that was because that is quite a crucial moment of the movie, and they probably wanted Margot Robbie to do that, but just for the sake of authenticity, just cast like 15, 16, even like an 18-year-old could probably pull off like playing a 15-year-old more effectively than she could. But going back to what you just said about Three Billboards, like that to me is the prime example of how to balance the dark
black comedy.
Yeah, that is perfect. That is the right balance, because it is a very serious movie, and there are moments of serious drama in that film. But it is also fucking hilarious in some points with Sam Rockwell. And if this movie had have got to that point, I think I would have been more lenient on it. And I feel like in this review, we've been really just like tearing into this movie. And I didn't think it was awful. I didn't come away hating this movie. I guess it's just kind of frustrating that it had the potential to be a really solid drama film, and they kind of didn't go in that direction. And I don't know how effective they were in what they set out to do with a mockumentary kind of style.
Yeah, I think this film it didn't know what it wanted to be. That's I think my final description. And with Three Billboards again, I saw it again yesterday. Cinema was sold out, and there's so many laughs. And it was because for the first time I saw it, it was almost empty. But when you're in a big crowd, just some of the moments from that, not to change this to a Three Billboards review, but that is a black comedy because, you know, there's moments where people are gasping up, and then there's moments of them just pissing themselves. Whereas with this, I couldn't imagine anyone having either. There's no outright funny scene in this film. No. There's no outright ooh scene in this. Even when the incident happens, when they break her knee, he just hits her with a baton once. Yeah, you know, I don't know. I felt that this was trying to be a funny drama. And I just don't think it's a shame because I have tore into it. In all honesty, I would put this down there. This is easily one of my least favorite Oscar films so far. And like I said, the performances are great. I can see why it's stuff. I can see why it's winning stuff. But overall, this isn't a film I'm going to come back to anytime soon.
Yeah, no, me too. I was trying to think of the song that plays when like she's getting beat up, but when you throw like Devil Woman over the top, like it immediately sets the tone for a more comedic tone despite what's going on. Yeah, I'm repeating myself. I would see, even if you're just looking at this from like the figure skating perspective, which there aren't many scenes of.
The CGI, I forgot. The CGI speed skating is by far, it felt like a parody. There's just like a moment where she's spinning, but it looked like the Tasmanian devil animations as a kid, where it just kept spinning round and round, and you could see. That's what I want to say.
It's the triple axel jumps, isn't it? And I mean, I don't know an exact figure, but I think there's only a select few people in the world in the sport of figure skating that can actually do that move. And I think, I swear I heard this somewhere, like the two people they had in mind to film that shot were at the Olympics when they were filming, so they couldn't do it.
I understand that bit. It wasn't even them. It was the normal stuff, just spinning around on ice, like not even moving, just standing still, the spinning. Yeah. It felt like that really fast sort of CGI effect that this one's had a bit too much fun with.
Yeah, but even if you're looking at that sort of like that big crucial moment, going back to what you said about Rush, a film that I knew nothing about, I don't know anything about the history of F1. Watching that movie, when it's built into those races, it feels earned. It feels like a huge event. And I know that that's, depending on your ideology of it, that's probably a much more dramatic scene than anything that happens in this movie. But even like the figure skating stuff, you'd kind of want it to build to that huge moment where like you're on the edge of your seat waiting for it to happen, but you just kind of let it wash over you. It just kind of happens. It's not particularly shot in a unique or interesting way, and you kind of just watch it play out. So even in that perspective, where this has happened to Nancy and she gets to the Olympics and she's doing this, you don't feel invested in it. And I think that had this gone with a darker tone, I think you probably would have. But my final thoughts, it's not an awful film. I think it's still very watchable. I think the second act definitely sags in the middle. There's definitely a lot of pacing issues, and I think they probably could have benefited from cutting about 15 minutes or so out of this movie in the middle. Some good performances there, but like you said, I'm probably not going to remember this movie as soon as the Oscars are done, really. I'm just going to move on with like Three Billboards or whatever else is out.
Yeah, definitely. That's kind of everything I guess we have to say on this. It's still Oscar season, so just a reminder that if anyone's got any Oscar predictions, send us a list. We will be doing, as usual, on Oscar Sunday, our annual Oscars live stream. Tate will be joining us from the mountains of Austria. He's already confirmed he'll be back for that, which I'm looking forward to. It'll be us three. Manning the nights. That's going to be good fun. Saturday, we have still a couple of films to get reviews out for. On Saturday, we said we'll be reviewing Get Out, so that I'm just going to assume that's our next review for anyone at home, because although yes, it's over a year old now, it's still one of the films that for multiple Oscars. And we also need to find time for Phantom Thread. That looks really exciting.
Procrastination doesn't even come into it when that film's mentioned.
There's the Timmy Shyamalan film, Call Me by Your Name. That's the one, and I think there's another best film. But the main thing is that for once, I'm actually up to date on the Oscars.
We've done pretty well this year. We've pretty much gone through them all.
Normally, I disappear. Normally, I do the tape, but I'm not in the mountains. I'm at home, just not watching these films. But this year's been a fun year, and I'm very excited about what's going to happen on that Oscar Sunday. I mean, if Nolan wins Best Director, you might actually find someone crying live on YouTube. It probably won't happen.
It will be that moment from Interstellar, won't it, with Matthew McConaughey, like the meme that's just like graced the internet. It will be that moment with you.
It would be like a Titanic moment. Like you could, if he wins, you could imagine the chorus coming on, and then it's just like me, like looking up to the sun. I guess this has been our review of I, Tonya. Thanks to everyone that's watched, commented, liked, share. Make sure to subscribe to us again. Have a look at our Oscars playlist. I don't normally do outros. This is terrible, but have a look at our Oscars playlist. So you see every Oscar film. We've got reviews up for with the most popular ones at the front, i.e. your Shape of Water, your Three Billboards, Brackett's the best one, Dunkirk. That's for either of those two films, actually. But have a look at all of that. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're updating them a lot more regularly than we used to be. And stick around with us again as we head up to the Oscars. And then around the Oscars time, we can go back to normal. We can start introducing some new shows and whatnot. But yeah, this was our review of I, Tonya. And thanks for listening.
See you guys.